Over the past 2 months, I have sold over $4,000 worth of orders on eBay. And here are my key 3 takeaways for anyone who is new or returning to reselling on eBay. Whether you're trying to just get rid of old stuff or side hustle for some extra cash, these 3 tips are essential to maximize your earning potential on eBay. So in order for these 3 tips to make the most sense, I'm gonna give you a little background on how I got started on eBay and what exactly I was selling, because that will make a difference. So the main product I sold on eBay was actually Lego sets. As a kid, I used to be really into this hobby, and I never would throw out any of my old sets or boxes or manuals. So as I grew older, I lost interest in this hobby, but I still had a lot of sets that were unopened, and I didn't want to just throw these things away. So as I was looking up online what I could do with them, it turns out that they actually appreciate really fast. They are considered an asset in some situations. They actually outpace even gold and the stock market over like a 10-year period. Super into investing and always looking for places to put money and to have it grow. And so when I learned about this, I got very interested. So while I knew I wasn't personally interested in this product anymore, I wanted to try and turn it into an investment vehicle. And at this point, I was pretty well into my investing hobbies with the stock market, and so I decided what's a different type of asset I could invest in and then sell at a later point. I decided to keep them around and actually even stockpile some specific sets too. So I invested in a storage space and started to do research on specific sets that I could even buy with the hopes of selling them a couple years later. And for those who don't know, with this type of asset, Legos usually will only go on a run of like 2 years or some product lifestyle like that. And generally with Lego products, they will appreciate fastest right after they retire because the supply goes down and demand shoots up, and so the perceived value of something is much higher shortly after. And that was kind of my philosophy, is to find sets that I thought would be worth a large sizable amount a year or 2 after they retired. So I'm not going to do the whole breakdown in this video, but that's the gist of it. If you are interested in seeing how I stored them, how much I sold each set for, and even the process of how much of that $4,000 was profit, then let me know in the comments below and I can definitely make a video on that. Enough of that, let's move on. So eventually, after stockpiling a ton of these Lego sets, I decided that it was time to sell it and move it into a different investment vehicle. I want to move this money into my stock portfolio or fund things like this channel, which 2 months later brings us to today. I've now sold over 50 sets and I have more that I'm going to continue selling, and I have enough experience where I can reasonably give you 3 solid tips that will help anybody selling on eBay. Tip number 1 might sound a little bit obvious, but it's to understand eBay's fees. Specifically, if you are new to eBay and you need to figure out how to price your products. This is something that I had to learn the hard way when I first got onto eBay, because no one was really talking about it online, and eBay is they're not cryptic with their fees, but they're also not totally transparent right off the jump. Like when you're listing a product, they don't tell you, hey, we're going to take 13.5%, which is pretty much exactly what they take after shipping and taxes added on. So that is a big cut, especially if you're trying to resell something for profit and not just make a little bit of change back on old products. And to me, this was a massive hurdle because, again, I invested in these things to make profit, and that is a huge cut into profit margins. So obviously you cannot get around this 13.5% cut. They're going to take that on any product that you have for a buy it now price. And then it's also important to note, for other fees on auctions, they charge a one-time fee regardless of the price. And there are more things, like you can get into sponsorships, but then they'll take 10% once your sponsored ad sells. Things like that are important to note and will really eat up the money in your account. And it kind of in line with understanding eBay fees, you have to make sure you understand how much you're charging for shipping, because there were definitely times where I did not charge the buyer enough for shipping, and I ended up losing even more money on top of all of those fees, and now you're getting screwed over on shipping too. And it's dangerous, because then you'll end up making almost no money, and that does not feel good. Know the size of the box you're going to ship every product out in before you list it. And additionally, just put it on a scale or something like that so you have a rough estimate of how much it's going to cost in terms of weight and things like that, because eBay will charge variable expenses for every single ounce. They will get their money, and so will the Post Service or FedEx or however you choose to ship out your products. And then moving into tip number 2 is selling newly retired products. So I didn't only sell of these 56 sets or whatever I'm currently at right now that I've sold. It was not exclusively Lego sets. I sold a couple lots of Pokemon cards that I just had stockpiled, and some old clothes and things like that. And frankly, newly retired products that have not been used will have the most appreciation value. Anything else falls into the category of just used products, and therefore they're not going to really rise in value except in some very specific edge cases. I did a little research before this video because I know Legos are pretty niche, but it is the same thing with newly retired shoes, newly retired clothes that haven't been worn, or any other collectible product, whether it's Funko Pops, whether it's physical video games, or any other sort of memorabilia, will always sell best when it is untouched, when it is in mint condition, and when it has retired recently. So keep that in mind if anyone who's trying to do this as a side hustle and looking for things to maybe flip. Like some people would say, look for stuff that has been unopened that you can sell for a decent profit, right? It's not going to be enough to just sell it for 2% profit off of what you bought, because at the end you're gonna lose money, right? If you paid $50 for something and you're charging $55 and a little bit for shipping, you're probably going to end up losing money on that product on eBay just due to those fees and the fact that the product might not be as in demand as you thought, right? And so eBay has a great feature for this where you can even look things up. It shows what it was listed for recently and like what it sold for. And so I would highly encourage you to check those listings on any product you're going to sell so you can get a good idea of how much you can expect to make from it, right? So the key takeaway from tip number 2 is sell newly retired products. Any niche, any market, it will always sell better if it has just retired and is in demand. Tip number 3 is a hardware tip. It is to make sure you focus on your listing photos. They will make or break your sale. I have sold plenty of sets with terrible listing photos, and then I have sold a lot more sets that had a white background and an overhead light. The way to do this is super easy. I would highly recommend you just take a white bed sheet, set it up somewhere, set up a light. It is very cheap and it will make all the difference in making your product stand out. I promise you, eBay will rank it better because it's getting more views, it's going to sell faster, and in the case of something like an auction, it really creates this feel that it's more professional and you'll end up getting more buyers and a higher sale value in all, and you will absolutely return your money and more, even if you have to buy a sheet new and a cheap overhead light. Like I had a silly cheap overhead light that didn't cost me anything, and an old bed sheet, and I didn't do anything. You just set it up. It takes 30 seconds when you're listing things. It makes it so much better. Having good lighting using a plain background, even if you can't find a white bed sheet, is still important. If you have a blank wall or something like that, it still will make a difference. Do not just take your listing photos out in the open or things like that. Now, things like furniture, if you're trying to flip furniture, obviously will have a little bit more leeway because the product itself speaks more, but in things like Pokemon cards, Lego sets, clothes, shoes, the background is incredibly important. It's super cheap and it adds no extra time, but it will result in more clicks and faster sales for more money. And that's really what ultimately we're all looking for, especially you guys who clicked on this video. Ultimately, reselling on eBay is a saturated market. It's not going to be super easy to make a profit, and how I profited best was by buying a couple years before and then holding it till most of these sets had expired. Now, I also did take the route of trying to flip stuff on eBay for a little bit, and it was so-so. It is very difficult to find cheap, good products on eBay that then you can sell back on eBay. Pricing is pretty standard across the board on eBay, and so obviously the fire sales or the very cheap products that are for good value will be gone pretty fast, and so you really have to keep your eye on it. But I would also recommend going to other third-party vendors to buy stuff, to source stuff, whether it's shoes or memorabilia or even other assets like Lego sets. You need to get crafty on where you're sourcing these things if you want to make a reliable profit on eBay. And of course, eBay is not the only place you can resell a bunch of these products to be successful and make some money, but it is by far the easiest platform to work with in terms of selling stuff online. It is much easier and more official than Craigslist. They make it super easy to make listings, and there are some fringe sites that you can go on that are very niche specific, like there are sites for just Pokemon cards or just Lego sets or just sneakers, right? Each one will have their own set of drawbacks and strengths, and personally I think eBay is still a great option even with their fees because they simply make it so easy to sell on their platform. You have a history of former listings, you have pre-built-in photos, You have AI generated descriptions, which can actually end up saving a lot of time and can add good value. They have automatic features that you can set up for volume purchasing, or a watcher discount where people will watch your product, they'll heart it, and you can send them personal discounts. And you have a lot of flexibility in terms of changing your listings and getting it out there. And it is nice that eBay does the marketing for you, which does somewhat justify their fees. I still think 13.5% is kind of aggressive, but beggars can't be choosers. They invented the platform. Ultimately, it comes down to understanding eBay fees, selling the right products, and focusing on your listing photos that are the three biggest impacts for what made a difference in my eBay sales and what will make a difference in your eBay sales. So those are the three main tips I have for you guys. If you're someone who's been thinking about eBay reselling for a while, make sure to stick around because I have a video coming out soon that's a more in-depth breakdown of exactly how I was selling my stuff on eBay. And also, it's important that you just start. If you're having thoughts about selling on eBay, just try it. You'll make some money and you'll make it pretty quick. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch this one right here. Chances are you'll like it if you're still here right now. Other than that, thank you guys. Have a great day.